1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2.
Good afternoon, everyone. We'll just let the photographers take a few pictures first. Perfect. Yeah. Okay, that'll do with the pictures, please. Thanks. Okay, thanks. Lisa will have gone through the press conference. We'll be divided into 3 parts, and obviously I'd like to welcome Roy Keane, and we'll open it up straight to questions. So, do you want to start?
Roy, it's Rob Dorset from Sky Sport News. Welcome. Congratulations. Did you ever envisage you'd have a role?
Role as an assistant manager, or?
Yeah, as part of the management setup.
I've always had an open mind, particularly the last few years. I think I've said it before. If I felt there was an opportunity to work with a top manager, or to work as an assistant, I was very open-minded to it. So I think it fell in nicely. The fact it was Martin asked me to get involved, and the fact it was back involved with the Irish team, it was too good to turn down, really. So I'm delighted to be involved, and looking forward to working with Martin and the rest of the staff, and hopefully helping the team out.
You've turned up early for this press conference. You've been early for training every single day the last couple of days.
Yeah, but I think we're on time, are we? Just 1 or 2 minutes. But no, obviously my role is a little different now in terms of involved in the training and making sure things are set up properly. That's just normal practice, you know. Don't be pat me on the back for that. You know, if you can't get to training on time, there's something drastic.
It maybe shows what you expect from the players, though. I mean, are you going to have?
No, you expect that from anybody to be on time for work. Jesus, you know, I'm not looking for miracles.
Can I ask you how that first conversation with John Delaney went when you met, after the history between the two of you? Did you have to clear the air?
No, very, very straightforward. Obviously, Martin had already made contact with me, and that was discussed. And I think actually one of my hopefully strong points is when I meet up with people where I've had disagreements with them before, that I'm quite happy to move on pretty quickly. It's happened in other parts of my life, you know, and to be honest, I'm going to disappoint you, because it was very, very straightforward. As a case, you know, we wanted what was good for Irish football, and the fact that Martin wanted me on board, and the past is the past. So it wasn't, honestly, it was very, very straightforward.
I wonder whether the past is the past for some Ireland supporters. Do you think there is a group out there that maybe will never forgive you?
Possibly so. But you know, I can't really worry too much about that. It's about the future and about today, and I'm working with the present group of players, and trying to, you know, as I said, help Martin and the rest of the staff and the team. And if we can do our jobs properly, and hopefully people will get behind the team, and some good days ahead. But it's obviously going to be hard. But I'm not here to try and change anyone's opinion about myself or decisions I've made in the past. I spent years trying to please everybody, and trust me, it's a waste of time and energy. You just got to do what you think is right, and get on with it.
Sorry about that. Sinead Sand from TV3, how are you? You're so used to being the boss, being the gaffer. What is it like now being the assistant manager?
When you look back on my career, I've literally only been a boss for 2 minutes in terms of my time at Sunderland for 2 seasons, and 1 and a bit at Ipswich. So it's not as if I've been a manager for 20 odd years and it's all new for me. No, it's, as I said, I'm the assistant to Martin, so whatever I can do to help Martin and the rest of the staff, then that's fine. I'm not no big ego trip where I feel I have to be the boss or the manager. That's certainly not my makeup. I'm always there to try and help and improve the people. think I've made mistakes before in terms of that, but generally speaking, I hope I get that right in terms of what buttons to press and what people I'm working with. So I'm no, it's not a massive change for me in terms of not being a manager, because as I said, I've only had short experience as a manager. I've generally been answering to people throughout my career, particularly when I was a player, and I have no problem with that, particularly when I'm working with people, you know, who show me respect.
What do you feel you can bring to the Republic of Ireland setup?
Good question. Lots of experience, lots of knowledge. Hopefully I like to set high standards. A lot of people seem to have an issue with that. A lot of the criticism I've faced over the last 15 or 20 years is that I'm very demanding and I don't settle for second best. Well, I'm certainly not going to apologise for that. You know, that's just part of my makeup. Hopefully the players will enjoy working with me. You know, I've got a lot of experience, played at a decent level, managed at a decent level, and but obviously I know I'm here to work alongside Martin, and hopefully lots to give a lot of the younger players who are coming through who won't have any hang-ups about the past. They might, you know, they'll enjoy working with me, and particularly the midfielders. As I said, surely I can bring something to them young boys, you know.
And as I said, like hang-ups about the past, you have been critical of the FEI and John Delaney. As I said, do you think that has been firmly put to bed now?
I hope so, yeah. Well, if I had any issues or any doubts, trust me, I wouldn't be sitting here now. You know, everything's very positive. Obviously, we've been only here 2 days. I know that can soon change. Obviously, we need results, and that's what we've come on board for. You know, that's the conversation I've had with Martin. We can do something with the group of players. They all seem. I know a lot of the players anyway. I've played with a few of them. I've managed quite a few of them. And obviously a few of the younger players I don't really know, but obviously that's what we're going to try and do over the next few months, try and get a winning team together. That's ultimately the job that lies ahead. So I'm certainly not too worried what's gone on in the past. It's just about, as I said, trying to bring something to the table and help the players.
I mean, how do you feel about the fact that there's been so much more hype about you coming in as assistant manager, almost more than Martin coming in?
No. That's all. You know, that's all part of the game, shall we say? But as I said, I know what it's about, and that's coming over to help Martin to try and get results for the Irish team. And once we do that, hopefully everyone will be happy. But of course, if we don't get results, we know what's coming. That's the nature of the game. You know, Martin's been around a hell of a long time, and as much as I've always said I'm happy to work under certain managers, you know, there would have had to be a manager of Martin's calibre. You know, I've got massive respect for Martin. We're certainly not buddies. But, you know, hopefully we'll work well together.
Tony, Martin.
Hi, Roy. Tony O'Neill from RTE. How long were you talking with Martin about this before you decided?
A couple of days. Yeah, as usual with these things, it can drag on. I'm sure initially when the FEI were looking for the right manager, but then things happen pretty quickly. So all happened very, you know, in a couple of days, from conversation with Martin, a brief meeting to meeting with John and Martin in London, and it's like full steam ahead.
Did you have reservations?
No, none whatsoever.
Martin told us that he's in it for the long haul no matter what, and he doesn't have an opt-out clause. If a top Premier League role came up for you, would you be interested?
Well, I don't think it will, so it's irrelevant.
But if it did?
Well, we'd cross that bridge when we get to it, you know. I think, as I said, we signed a contract for the next couple of years, and that's the focus. You know, I think it's always dangerous to sign any sort of contract thinking of some sort of get out or what might happen further down the road. That's not in the mindset. The mindset is, you know, Martin, I feel lucky that he's asked me. I feel lucky to be back involved in the Irish setup, and hopefully the players will enjoy that. You know, we're looking forward to the challenge ahead. But like I said, it's going to be hard going. It's not, you know, it's not going to be a case of clicking the fingers and everything's going to fall into place. Ideally, I suppose we would have liked the game a touch earlier in terms of a competitive game, but that's just who it is. But we certainly have a number of months ahead to look at the players, look at some of the younger boys, obviously get a few games under our belt, and make sure we're ready for obviously the first game. I think is next September. So no, that's not in my mindset. Going, well, what if something happens? And I've been out of the game for the last 2 and a bit years, and I've had 1 or 2 opportunities to get back in. But this was the right fit, definitely.
Is it a case, do you think, though, that the longer you're out of the game, the harder it is to get back in?
Of course, I think that's That's obvious. I think sometimes it's easier to get a job when you're in a job. It's not as if I've been sitting back with my feet up. I've kept myself busy. Obviously, 1 or 2 TV commitments. I think that's been good for me, getting to see matches. And most weekends I'm out watching matches anyway. So it's, but it's still a big commitment. You know, I suppose people look, sometimes international managers or particularly maybe assistant managers almost look at it as a part-time role, but it's far from it. There's got to be that full commitment to it, and that's also when you sign the contract, you're fully committed, and you're not thinking in the back of your mind something might come up next week or next month. You've got to focus, watch matches, watch loads of matches, watch the players in different environments. Obviously, a few lads at clubs in terms of the Premiership, but a lot of lads in the Championship, and for me, that'll be a part of the job that certainly won't be hassle for me. You know, because as I said, I enjoy watching football matches. It's in my nature.
Tony talked about luck, but do you think that the current squad was good enough to qualify for the World Cup?
No, but everyone needs a bit of luck. Don't get me wrong, but also when you look at certain group tables or any league tables, you know, you got to get the results. You got to go out and do the business. And the last few years, obviously, the team has struggled a little bit. That's obviously no criticism of the previous manager. I think he'd done a very good job. But you know, sometimes players need different ideas, a new voice, change of environment, and no, obviously it's our job now is to make sure that, you know, we do qualify and you try and make your own bit of luck. But they certainly were in a tough group. There's no getting away from that. You know, sometimes the luck comes in the draw, not in terms of the games, because if you don't do the business, you're going to come unstuck. We all know that.
Michael?
Roy, Michael McMullen from Today FM. Martin obviously is a very experienced manager. I wonder whether the opportunity to learn from someone like him was an attraction of this job for you. Absolutely,
100%. That was a big attraction with the job. As I said, I've looked at Martin closely. Even when I've been out of the game the last few years, I've looked at managers. I thought, which type of managers could I work under? Because I know you got to get the right chemistry, and a lot of experienced managers like Martin would have people he's been worked with for a long time, or he's known from his playing days, people like Seamus and previous staff he's worked with. But if you'd asked me 6 months ago or a year ago, what kind, you know, would Martin be the type of manager I'd like to work under? Absolutely. But of course, it doesn't mean to say something was going to work out. Obviously, we come across each other a little bit with ITV doing a few matches, but as I said, it's certainly not a pals act. You know, Martin's a very serious manager. I'm hoping he's looking at me and thinking that, you know, I've got a chance of being a decent coach or a decent manager, and I can bring something. But working with Martin hopefully will be a good experience for me.
Would you say, Roy, that the number of managers you would have been willing to take on this role with would be quite small?
Possibly so, because unfortunately some people might. I suppose it goes to show how strong Martin is. You know, the fact he's brought me on board, because unfortunately people might see me as a threat or some sort of troublemaker of some sort. But hopefully Martin's seen something in me that I think I have a lot to offer. Despite the criticism I've as a manager, I think I've done okay as a manager. Obviously, I would have liked to have done better. And so hopefully that's a compliment in itself that Martin thinks I can obviously help him. And just finally for me, Roy, a number of the players you played with are still in the squad. I wonder, did you speak to any of them before deciding to accept the job? No, absolutely not. No, obviously none of their business, you know, what I was going to do. It's a ridiculous question.
Daniel?
Roy, Daniel, pitcher from FM 104 Sport. In your work as a TV pundit, especially during the Euros and after the loss to Spain, you were heavily critical of the players in the squad, and particularly those you thought were top players. Do you kind of stand over those comments you made, and have you kind of spoken to those players about those comments, expressed those views? No, not in terms of what I said, that I felt the team could have done better. I think everyone would agree with that. You know, saying there were controversial comments. I didn't think there were. Just in particular, you said that some of the players who thought they were top players needed a bit of a wake-up.
I think there's an issue with lots of players in general who maybe think they're slightly better than what they are. But from my couple of days with the players, when I sometimes say players, and I don't mean the Irish players, I don't necessarily mean, I think it's thrown out there too quickly that some players are world-class players or great players. I think that's just thrown around too lightly. So I always think players should do better. So I don't think any of my comments were, I hope, nothing too over the top. I felt during the Euros, like everybody else, Ireland should have done better. And surely this, there's nothing wrong with saying that when you lose your three games. So,
Ger?
Ger Gilroy from Off the Ball on Newstalk. The 2 years out of the game and the role that you're taking with Martin suggests that there are aspects of the role of management that you specifically want to work on and improve on. Can you talk to us a bit about that?
I think when you're a manager or an assistant manager, you're always learning. As I said, I obviously weighed up the fact that I was going to be assistant. I think that would give me an opportunity. I'd like to think a bit more hands-on with players, because despite what a lot of people think, I generally got on with a lot of the players I worked with. So I can focus on that quite a bit. Obviously, Martin being the manager, Martin will have to ultimately pick the team, pick the tactics, but hopefully he'll take my opinion on board.
Does that mean more coaching and maybe...
Yeah, that's part of my aim, yeah, of course.
Would you have not maybe done enough coaching over the time that you were manager?
I think my style of management, when I had some good staff around me, particularly when I was at Sunderland Ipswich, was to let a lot of my coaches get on with the job. And I think when you're a manager, and maybe Martin will do the same, is sometimes you need to step back and look at the bigger picture, which I was comfortable doing as well as a manager, which sometimes... doesn't give you the opportunity sometimes to actually get on the training pitch as much as you'd like. So there's that does attract me to the job in terms of being a bit more hands-on and doing more sessions.
And is that what you want to learn from this?
There's loads I want to learn. As I said, I think you look at a lot of the top managers out there, you're always learning about the game. That's the name of the game. If you think you've got all the answers, then obviously you're heading for trouble. So I'm under no illusions. I've got lots to learn. And I never for once, even in my kind of little bit of good spell at Sunderland to start, that I had all the answers to the game. Far from it. I've lots to learn, and this gives me an opportunity again to learn, but again, hopefully to bring something to the team.
Juliet?
Roy, you spoke last week when you were working for television about how you felt you deserved another chance at coaching and management.
Yeah.
Martin ONeill spoke yesterday about how he was surprised that no one had really given you that chance since Ipswich, and it's easy to forget what you achieved at Sunderland in your first season. So has it been a frustrating time for you? I
think it's always frustrating for a lot of managers who rode at the game. I see managers seem to, walk back in the job after difficult spells. Obviously at Ipswich, it could have gone better. But even from my time at Ipswich, there was pluses there with a lot of the young players we played. Got to a cup semi-final, But I felt clubs should have given me an opportunity. I've had two opportunities to get back into football. Obviously, one was working abroad, another was an international job, and it didn't quite fall into place. But there's certainly clubs in England I feel they should have given me an opportunity. But a lot of coaches say that. So yeah, it was frustrating. But I also know you have to be patient and obviously wait for the right opportunity. But as I said, it's not as if I've been sitting home all day with my feet up. I've kept myself busy. As I said, I've always been the one for going to watch matches anyway. So. I'm just glad that, as I said, that someone like Martin ONeill said, listen, do you fancy come and work with me? And I said, particularly with the Irish team, I thought really that it seemed like such a good fit. I couldn't say no. And what happens down the road, again, I'm still quite young. It's not as if I've closed the door on any other opportunity to get back into management in terms of probably England and being a manager. But you can't look too far ahead. As I said, this was the opportunity right in front of me. And I know people think I'm a little bit crazy, but I would have been crazy to turn it down. It was just too good an opportunity. And there wasn't one bone in my body that said, no, this is not for me. I just thought, as soon as I met Martin and we discussed it, I thought, yeah, there was nothing to discuss. It was like, yeah, let's go for it.
What about the fact, though, getting your head around that you're going to be working with these players for 9 or 10 days and then you're not going to see them again till next year? And Martin had said yesterday that's probably the bit that's going to hit home the most. Yeah, absolutely.
But that's just part of the job. I spoke to other international managers about it, obviously, before when I'd done a couple of games with Gordon Strachan, and that's one of the downsides for international management. But as I said, it's not as if you're still not going to be getting to see the players. I'll be watching them every week, but of course you won't be hands-on with them. But you look at all that before you say yes to the job, and it's just the way it is. There's not much we can do about it. We just got to make sure that when we do get together, we work hard and we're focused and we try and do well and we try and get the right results. And then, we'll almost be delighted not to see each other for a month or two, and we look forward to the next match. And it's not all negative, that side of it. It's just, I suppose, the nature of international football.
Stephen?
Roy, just on results and stuff, sorry, Stephen Doyle, 98 FM. There seemed to be, from Giovanni Trapattoni, used to speak a lot about the players and say that we never had any world-class players, which, may be fair enough, but there seemed to be an acceptance then from the players that we couldn't beat the top seeds in the group, that, we were always going for a runner-up spot. How do you change that mentality?
Well, the record, I suppose, hasn't been great over the last few years. From my own experience, anytime when I played for Ireland, and we obviously some good results, we always felt we had a chance of winning every match we went into. It didn't always happen, of course, because you come up against top teams. But I hope, and again, we'll get to know that better when we work closely with the players, that surely they go into every game believing they can get the right result. But I know the record obviously hasn't been great against some of the top teams, and Ireland have played some top teams over the last few years. The Germanys of this world are outstanding, but whether you look at the Swedens and the Austrias and all these teams, you think, I always think Ireland should be getting better results. But I was the same when I was a player. I suppose that was one of the reasons I used to get frustrated. I always felt we should do better than what we're doing, and we'll try and get that message to the players, and hopefully they'll plug into it, because I know Martin will have the same mindset as me, that listen, you've got to go into every game, no matter who you're playing, believing you get the right result. But of course, it's easy sitting here in front of a microphone saying, listen, let's go out and doing the business. That's why I used to love playing. There's only so much talking you can do. It's going out and doing the business, and hopefully we'll start with that on Friday night. But we know we've obviously, particularly come the qualifiers next September, that the players will have an idea of what me and Martin are about. And we're very driven, very professional. We want to do things properly, and we want to win football matches. That's the name of the game, to win.
Ray Houghton said last week when you were speaking to him that you felt there were players in the current squad that were actually better than you. Can you maybe tell us which
I don't think I
players
said that, no. I don't remember saying that, so I don't know if Ray had a few pints in him, but no, maybe I've said something along the lines that maybe there's more potential, and sometimes the players are the last to think that. You run about their mindset. Hopefully when we start working with some of the players that, maybe there has been a mentality when they've played for Ireland or even at their club level, that sometimes they don't realise how good they are. Maybe something along them lines. Because from what we've seen, I know it's only 2 days, but they're certainly enthusiastic and they're hungry and they want to do well for Ireland, which gives you a chance. And we just got to make sure that they're focused when they turn up, and that they're a smart team and they're ready and focused to do the business. Because I certainly think, despite what people might have thought as criticism from me, I certainly never questioned any of the players' hunger or desire to do well. I think the players deserve a lot of credit for that, but that is part of the game. What you need, obviously, in some of the big matches is just a little bit of quality to win you the tight football matches, and the concentration levels. From the few clips and the few bits I've seen over the last year or two, hopefully there's loads of areas we feel we can improve on. But I'm obviously going to say that because that's our job, to make sure we try and improve on areas we feel of maybe some of the players have just slightly slacked off on.
Roy, it's interesting that you say you've thought about managers you'd be prepared to work with in an assistant role. I wonder if that's an acknowledgement, with the benefit of hindsight, that becoming a manager in your own right came a little early in your career, a little too soon after you finished playing.
No, I wouldn't agree with that. No, I think the opportunity that came up for me was the right one at Sunderland. And despite what anyone says, Sunderland I thought was pretty decent. I think sometimes you have to be careful. You can't be trying to be too clever what you're planning. But the fact, because you've started off as a manager, I never ruled out ever being an assistant to somebody. As I said, that's all part of my experience. So no, I don't think that's been a hindrance to me in terms of going straight into being a manager. I think that was just that fell in front of me, and to work at a top club like Sunderland was fantastic. And these experiences, probably even more so my experience at Ipswich, will stand me in good stead whether I go back into being a manager, or even more so when I'm assistant, understanding the pressure that Martin will be under, the demands he's got, that I'm there to spell it out. I'm there to assist him, to help him in anything he wants, whether taking a training session, going to watch players, sometimes doing the media. So I think that will help me, that I know what it's like on the other side. I know how hard it is when you're a manager, and disappointing players by letting them out. And hopefully my role will be, like I've said, to assist Martin, help him in any way I can, and that's my job. That's the role I've got. So to question what happened previously or what might happen in the future, it's almost irrelevant. To just focus on the now. We've had a lovely few days. The hotel's been lovely. Food's been excellent. Training ground is lovely. No potholes. We've had footballs. It's been great. Bibs, everything. It's been major progress.
This gentleman here.
Roy, Alan Condon for Goal.com. What was it that attracted you to this specific job, besides the opportunity to work with such a top manager like Martin ONeill?
Nice to get back involved with Ireland, because I've seen some of the matches, and it was just the whole the emotional attraction to it. I think I know we're when you're a manager, it's very much a business, but I'm quite an emotional person. To get back involved with Ireland, as I said, I know some of the players. Looking forward to working with the lads I've not worked with before. That was the whole package. It's good for me. It's good for my family. As I said, to work with Martin, to try and help the team qualify. Everything. There was, as I said, I couldn't think of any. Because, like in any opportunity, any job, you look at the pluses and the minuses, and I couldn't think of any minus why I shouldn't get back involved. None whatsoever. So it's all good.
What was it like working with the players that were your teammates not so long ago, such as Roy Keane?
That's good. Obviously, again, I think that hopefully what will help me a little bit being the assistant, I can be maybe a little bit closer to the players, a bit more hands-on, appreciating obviously I'm a staff member. But that's not an issue, because, as I said, I've still come across some of the players over the years, bumping into people, and as I said, it's nice. I've played with Robbie and people like Shazy, and so that's not an issue. And there's obviously that mutual respect between each other anyway. So, but I know my role, and they know what that is, and that's to try and help the team to be focused and ready. So that's that's been good. I've enjoyed. I've missed having the bit of crack. I love football chat, so we've had the last couple of nights good crack with the staff and the players, and I missed that side of it. I have to say that's one of the real pluses, getting back into football chat, and even having a chat with some of the players 1-to-1, which I've done. It's been good. Really enjoyed it.
Damien?
Right, Martin joked last week that he would be bad cop and you would be bad cop.
No, I think it's going to be the other way around. I think I'm going to have to be the good cop. You obviously don't know Martin as well as you think you do. He makes me look like Mother Teresa. He's it should be interesting.
Do you think there are more similarities between you than differences?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. But strangely enough, we've got quite a lot in common, and you look at some of our career paths and the people we worked with and the clubs we've been involved with. But also knowing, I've got to step back and understanding that Martin's making the decisions and the final say. But Martin has said from day one, obviously, I think he'll respect my opinion, and I have a lot of ideas, in my head, and a lot of my own experiences that I'll throw into the mix. But ultimately, then I'll step back and let Martin make the decision. That's his job. But yeah, there is a lot of stuff that we've got in common, absolutely, which is nice. For sometimes over, when you're having almost normal conversations, it's not all going to be about football. So yeah, we've, as I said, in our short spell, the bit of TV work we've done together when we travel abroad, it's been nice, but also understanding that the mindset has to change now. It's about getting football results. It's well and good travelling, and when you're sitting in a TV studio, that's quite easy. It's going to be different now. We're in a dressing room. The decisions are going to be made, and things have got to be said. And what I've got to learn, and no doubt there'll be mistakes. I just learn my boundaries, know when to step in, when to say nothing, and that's all part of the journey ahead.
Niall?
Roy Niall Kelly from thescore.ie. After Giovanni left, yours was one of the names linked with the management job, along with Martin and Mick McCarthy. Did you consider yourself a candidate at that stage?
I didn't think too much about it. I think I was asked. I was at a function in Cork, I don't know, I'm guessing 5-6 weeks ago, and some of the media were there, and I honestly didn't think too much about it. I thought if I get the call, then we'll take it from there. So I didn't see myself as a favourite or a candidate or anything like that. I just thought if I get a call, I'll take it when it comes.
at any stage prior to Martin approaching you to ask you to come on board as his assistant, had the possibility of you becoming Ireland manager come up?
I'm not really sure. No, I don't know. You'd have to ask, the FAI. I think clearly that I said it myself from day one that, Martin, I felt was the right man for it, whatever my own situation was. That, but obviously the FAI were taking the time. They're going to make their own decision. So the fact is I felt Martin was the right guy, worked out well, and the fact he was interested in bringing me on board was perfect. Everything fell into place, and no, that was good.
Right, it strikes me you've always been very true to yourself in what you've said. Whether it's been liked or not by other people, you've always been honest in your belief. Will that change? Will you have to rein in your opinions, do you think?
Maybe.
This role?
Maybe.
Is it something you've discussed with Martin? He says he doesn't want to tame you at all.
No, well, I hope not. I think there's nothing to tame. Some sort of animal, you know what I mean? I'm a footballing man. I like to work hard and push people, and sometimes I suppose I have got that slightly wrong on one or two occasions over the years, but generally speaking I look back and I think I got a lot of it right. So yeah, there's areas I need to look at, particularly as I said, now I'm the assistant, to when to step back, and hopefully I get that right as well, but also there to push the players and put demands on the players like we did today in training. We got some good players. And as I said, sometimes the players themselves are the last to realise how good they are. Got some really good young players, and you've got to push them and put demands on them. Because from my own experience, I used to like that. I used to like people pushing me. That's the name of the game. From when you're a kid. My manager, when I was a kid at Rockmore, come on, you can do better, but keep doing better. I loved it. That's great. Great, but there's a way of speaking to people. I understand all that. There's a way of getting that message across, and how you put the demands on them. You still have to, you have to treat people with respect, and as I said, hopefully the players from the last few days will appreciate that. But also, as I said, I need to step back as well and let Martin obviously run the show. I'm just here to help.
Without losing that passion.
Yeah, no, hopefully the day I lose any passion for football, I'll keep well out of the game. That's, again, if you're talking about having passion for the game and being demanding, if that's a problem for people, then there's something wrong. I think if you play in any sport, if you haven't got passion, you're in big trouble.
Ken Early, second captain's Irish Times. You just said a second ago, you're not an animal. You've already said some people think you're a bit crazy or a troublemaker. Were you surprised when Alex Ferguson, who you worked with for so long, seemed to deliberately try to create that impression?
I think I've no issues. The beauty of football, everyone has opinions. I've no problem with that. The issue I'll have with anybody who seems to talk about me or has issues with what I've said in the past, and people will, if they tell lies about me, that's when I'll come out and defend myself. But I'm not going to sit here and defend myself, regarding Alex Ferguson. That's for another day. So I'm not really going to go into that too much. But football's about opinions, no problem with that. But when it's lies, that's when you come out and say something. But today is not for that. Today is just about talking, getting back involved in the Irish team, working with Martin, all positive. And it's not an area I want to go to today.
Do you see yourself in this job, maybe checking in with players in between games? Because you will have the chance, I suppose, to
yeah, I hope so. Yeah, of course. Yeah, you'd hope, particularly, for example, up around my neck of the woods, if young Gibson's injured, there'll be issues that I'll go through with Martin for certainly to touch base with these players. Absolutely. And if I come across them on my travels. But I've been a player myself. Players certainly don't want necessarily staff members ringing them and saying, what's the crack, you know what I mean? They'll soon be ignoring your calls, trust me. So no, again, that's a balancing act, but hopefully if there's a young player out there or any player who's having a struggle or he's not in their team and they're playing development games or reserve matches, that I go and watch them, and if I can have a quick word with them afterwards, absolutely, which I've always been comfortable with anyway. That's not a big challenge. But because there will be players from the Irish squad that we have at the moment over the next few months will fall out of favour at their clubs, no doubt. There's a few at the moment. There'll be lads get bad injuries. That you hope that if you get the opportunity, you go and speak to them, or you meet them for a cup of tea at the training ground or something like that. Or you just go, listen, you're still part of the plans, don't worry. And, I think all players ultimately would enjoy that. But without going over the top either. As I said, you don't want to... we're not here to annoy players either or pester them. They've got busy careers and they've got busy lives, and No, we got to be careful with that one, that we don't basically don't deny him.
A couple of years ago, Roy, you were here and mentioned Stephen Ireland, who obviously still hasn't returned. You said he's got pure quality. If it was me, I'd go and wait outside his house until he agreed to come back. Do you still feel the same way about that?
I don't know about that. No, it's great to see him back playing. Obviously, again, we got the job last week. There's loads of areas I'm sure Martin will look at, with lads who've maybe been on the scene. I know a few lads have come back, people like Stokesy. So if we feel, Ireland is any bit interested in coming playing for Ireland again, and Martin gets involved and he wants me to try and get involved, then we've got to do our best to get these players back on board, absolutely. Particularly now he's back playing, and it's important as well that he focuses on his club career. He's only played a few games over the last month or two. But if that's an area that Martin wants me to look at and to speak to players, I wouldn't say I know him too well, the player, but I'd like to think certainly he'd be open to having some sort of conversation. And we'll do our best to get him back involved if that's what he wants.
Last question for Tony.
Well, how would you define success for the next 2.5 years? Is it simply qualification?
Yeah. Let's skip the chase. Here to qualify. We look forward to the draw in a few months. We look forward to the games coming up Friday and Tuesday. But ultimately, that's what we're here for. I think in a couple of years' time, if we're not qualified, I think people think I'm pretty blunt and honest. I think Martin's the same. I think Martin will look at it, and there might be circumstances I think Martin's mentioned, if a bit unlucky and we've done really well and the progress has been there for everyone to see. But in terms of qualifying, that's the remit. Let's try and qualify, and please God, if we manage to do that, then kick on and not just go to tournaments thinking, well, we've qualified, it's great. No, let's go and have an impact. But first and foremost, before you can have an impact on any tournament, you have to qualify. So that's the aim. Let's see how it goes.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody with a black wristband, can you come to the room next to the right?